So I didn't start off as a software developer. I started off as a Windows 95 dial-up tech support person, which is about as awesome as you can imagine. It was interesting. It actually really was. Learning how to debug weird shit like that has made me a better developer. And so that was a great job, you know, answering calls, dealing with that kind of weird stuff. Everything was fine until one day, our manager comes in and says that we need to start making, of all things, we need to start making long-distance sales calls when our inbound call volumes kind of dropped, right? And so we did it because we were all like, you know, 18 and idiots. And that sucked, right? There's nothing worse than calling a grandma in Humble, Texas at dinner time and asking her to switch long-distance carriers. That job quickly went from being awesome to being sucky. And so at the time, it's very lucky, a buddy of mine was doing, he worked at another ISP here in town. They were hiring. So I sent him my resume, which had like 2 months of experience at this place. And I guess they were so hard up that they offered me a job. So I did what you're taught to do, which is you write a resignation letter and you go hand it to your manager. I'd been there all of 4 months. So I go and I hand him this resignation letter, and the guy takes it and walks it away. And I think, all right, well, I'm done. I'll be, 2 weeks and I'll be out. And get back on the phones. 10 minutes later, they come and pull me off the phone and escort me over to the owner's office, right? Like the big bad owner. I've never met him before in my life. He's like, I hear you're leaving. Oh, yeah, but, why do you want to leave? And so I tell him about the long distance thing, and that fucking sucks. And he's like, well, what did they offer you? And he proceeds to make me a counteroffer of $1 an hour more on top of the offer, which was already 50 cents more. And I mean, this is 1997 50 cents. I mean, this is 50 cents. Right? So I mean, I'm still in college. This is big money. And so I'm like, well, like that's wonderful. Thank you for this offer. Do I still have to make these goddamn long distance calls? And he says, this is something very interesting. He says, those long distance calls pay your salary. So that's the first lesson, right? First lesson is you'll keep your job as long as you continue to provide more or as much value to the company as it costs them to keep you as an employee. Once that switches, once you become a fiscal liability to the company, right? There's no need for them to keep you on, right? So I didn't want to keep doing the long distance stuff, and so I said, thank you, but no thank you. At which point I was immediately escorted out of the building. Which leads me to my second lesson, which is if you're prepared to quit a job, make sure you have a ride home. Because sitting in the parking lot of a place that you've just been escorted out of for 2 hours, waiting for your ride, sucks a lot. So I'm gonna go work at this other internet place, right? And that was awesome. And the first day I go in there, my boss walks in and he's like, all right, I just saw Linux on this box. It's a busted ass old PC, right? I'm like, sure, yes sir, awesome. Then I turn to my coworker when this guy leaves and I'm like, what's a Linux? Which leads me to my next lesson. Enthusiasm is nice and good, especially when you're starting out. Make sure you have someone who can watch your back when you kind of overextend yourself, because it happens. That place was awesome. I learned a ton of stuff. Not the least of which, I learned how to talk to customers, right? And these customers were a little more savvy than maybe the guys I was talking to before. These are the guys who were like dialing up to an ISP using Linux back in like 1997, right? I mean, so these guys knew what was up, right? And so they would call and oftentimes be very frustrated. And so I learned how to deal with angry customers, and that is something I was able to parlay throughout my career in talking with angry product managers and talking with angry QA people. And the secret, if you could even call it a secret, right, is to listen to what they're saying and try and feel, right? Try and feel that anger and that frustration just for a second, right? Feel it, and then realize that it's your fault. It's your fault. It's your company's fault, right? Like, y'all are the ones who got them there, right? And once you're at that point, right, then you're able to talk to them, right? Then you're able to say, you know what, I'm sorry. What can we do to help? How do we get past this, right? If you're a software engineer, QA's pissed off at you, you need to sit in their place and say, yeah, they can't do their jobs because I fucked some shit up, or whatever it is, right? So that was an incredibly valuable lesson to learn. I also learned that sometimes people are just dicks, right? There was this one guy who called in who he was just an asshole. He goes on and on and on about some billing problem. And it was like $5, right? Granted, it's like $1985, so it was real money, but still, it's $5. So this guy is just an asshole, arguing over $5 and yelling. I thought I was a pretty worldly dude at this point. I was learning all sorts of things that I could do to my mother, that I had apparently done to my mother from this guy. Like, it was so bad that I put him on mute and on speaker so the other guys in the support office could hear, right? It's like, check this guy out. Just at that point, my boss comes shimmy shucking down the road. He hears this guy going crazy on the phone. He walks over to the phone, takes him off mute, picks it up, and says, "Nobody talks to my employees that way." Click. Turns to me and apologizes. Sorry you sat through that. Cancel his account immediately. Any further phone calls from him, send them right to me. It's my next lesson. A boss's job is to protect and insulate their employees. Come on! I'm just playing. Hold on. We're good. No one ever calls me. I'm so alone. So a boss's job is to protect and insulate his employees from things that aren't part of his job description or her job description. You should never be afraid of your boss. You should feel safe around your boss. And if that's not the case, right, then your boss is doing a shitty job. True story. So I'm pretty good with customers, except for that dude. And one customer in particular likes my style, likes what I do, extends me a job offer to be a full-time systems administrator. Now, all this work before was just like, it was hourly work, right? So for those of you who are too young to know the term systems administrator, a systems administrator is what we call nowadays DevOps engineers. So that's what I did. So I go over, sysadmining it up. It was awesome. My first full-time gig, first salaried gig, right? Could show up when I wanted, didn't have to get a certain number of hours a day. As long as I got my work done, everything was cool. Great time, great job. Until one day, our HR manager rolls into our office, and she's pale. Just drained pale. And she says, "I need you to delete an email that's been sent to the entire company." Now I'm young, right, and an idiot. And my freetard is full on, and I'm like, I don't feel comfortable deleting someone's email. Like, the mail spool files are their personal property, blah, 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 blah. And just like that's how I said it. and so she goes to my manager, and she whispers something in his ear, and then he goes pale, and he's like, do it. So I go and I do it. But by then, the damage had already been done, right? Some of our employees had already had stuff set up to where their emails kind of got auto-forwarded to external email accounts. So they were already there. And by the next morning, shit hit the fan. What had happened was our accountant had hit reply all to an email sent to all of the company when he meant to hit reply to the HR person. So he inadvertently sends this email to the entire company with that month's payroll information. So everyone knows all of a sudden what everyone else in the company makes. Yeah, so by the next day, everyone has what we affectionately came to term the spreadsheet. Which leads me to my next lesson: be very careful between reply and reply all. You think it's not going to happen to you, and then 4 engineers quit the next day. Which leads me to my next lesson. If you're ever in a position to pay people, make sure that you pay them. Make sure you can justify their pay in front of the entire company. Which this place totally couldn't. It was awful. It was really bad. But someday, right? Someday you will have to justify, right? And you should be careful with that. So yeah, so I'm sysadmining it up. That's how I sysadmin, just pretty much like this. Which is why I wasn't a very good sysadmin. I wasn't, honestly, I wasn't really good. I'm disorganized by nature, which should be obvious by this point in the talk. So I don't have any slides. I'm not super good at managing my own time or managing long-term projects on my own. So my favorite part of the job, however, was making the place I was working was a software development company, making our software run across all of our different platforms, right? And taking open source stuff and making sure that it ran across all sorts of weird ass Unixes and stuff. That's what I loved to do. That's what I kept looking to do, right? And at the same time, my old boss had sent me an email asking me to do some work on some customer management software I had written back in my last job. So, do a little side work for him. I fucking love it, right? And that's when I realized I kind of want to be a software developer, not a sysadmin. Just the next lesson. There's a lot of lessons. The next lesson is when you find the thing that you really like doing, right? Do that as much as you can, right? Don't stick with something you don't really enjoy just because that's where you're making your money. So I'm working there, and there are knowing glances going around this room. That's right, shit got real. I apologize. So after a while, I leave the place I'm at and I go back to my old job. This time as a full-time software developer. It's great. My very first full-time software development job, right? Everything I thought it'd be and more. Everything's fine. Everything's wonderful. And then my girlfriend at the time and I get pregnant. Wasn't exactly planned, but it was all right. And what I did not expect to happen was one of my closest and dearest friends comes to me when I find out that we're pregnant. This friend of mine is the ever-present worry that I cannot supply for my family. And so I start freaking the hell out, right? Here I am making like $30K a year. I'm living great. I live down, like way down Riverside. Again, $1998. I'm living with like 4 dudes, right? I pay like $200 a month in rent, you know? Like, I'm living fine. Now I have a kid on the way. I'm like, well, holy shit. Like, it's time to put on your big boy pants, right? So at the same time, now this is in 1999, right? It's the height of the dot-com boom. I am literally getting phone calls every day, several times a day, from recruiters offering 3, 4 times what I'm making. I mean, I have to move to SF or New York or something, but it's real money. And so I go to my boss. And I just lay it all out on the table. Like, Tracy's pregnant, and we have all this, you know, we have student loans, and she needs a new car, and well, I mean, just on and on and on and on and on, right? And I have all these recruiters calling, and such an idiot. I play the voicemails of these guys, right? Thinking it'll help. He's like, no, don't worry about it. Don't worry. It's like, we're family here. We're family. We take care of our own. We'll work something out. I'm like, sweet. Don't worry about it. A couple days go by. A week goes by. 2 weeks go by. Not a word. Finally, I cornered this guy in the bathroom. Which is a sad theme of my career. Afterwards, when we're at B.D. Riley's, remind me to tell you the story of how I accidentally flirted with a guy in the bathroom last week. It's a total accident. It was a pretty good story. So like, what's going? I mean, it was obvious at this point he was dodging me. Right? I'd go to his office and he wasn't there. I'm in a meeting. Guy hadn't had a meeting in like 4 years. All of a sudden, his meetings all day. I'm like, boss, what's the deal? What are we doing? So, well, I talked to the board. It's like, oh, I didn't even know we had a board. That's awesome. That's great that we have a board. What did the board have to say? So the board says that we can offer you $36,000 a year. And that's it. And that's as much as you'll ever make, because you don't have a degree. Now I'm thinking, I have all these voicemails sitting on my phone offering a little bit more than that. And I say that, and he's like, well, the board, blah, 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 blah. So I leave the bathroom. And I go to my office and pack up my stuff and walk out. It's the first and up till now, last job, I didn't give notice. I just walked out. I was pissed. I was hurt. I was betrayed. I was all this stuff. And now I'm poor. I don't even have the $36,000, right? I'm like, whoa, Jesus. This is not a good day for Mando. But 4 days later, I was sitting in Maine, Freeport, Maine, working at a contract gig at LL Bean. Guaranteed 40 hours a week. Pulling down 120 bucks an hour. Pretty sweet. LL Bean was an interesting place. LL Bean's in Maine. Maine's an interesting place. I went up there in August of Maine, August of 1999. There's no place, I'm convinced, no place on earth that is more beautiful than Maine in August. When I was driving out of Austin, it was 112 degrees. When I got to Maine, they had a high of like 73. and like a low of like 59. It's gorgeous. They had like freaking hot and cold running lobster. I mean, people just throwing lobsters at you as you drive down the road. It's amazing. I loved it until October, which is when winter starts. I didn't have a coat. And so I didn't know. I mean, you expect, right? And Maine's gonna be cold. It's cold, it's Maine. It's gonna be cold. You don't expect like October 3rd to be cold. Wake up and there's like 3 feet of snow on the ground. And I have no coat. And I have to go, it's like a Tuesday, I have to go to work, right? So I dig the truck out of the snow. I put on literally half of my clothes. I had like 2 pairs of pants, like 3 t-shirts, a long sleeve shirt, and a sweater. And I get in the truck, and I go driving down the road. I lived at the time 20 miles from the office. Which leads me to my next lesson. If you ever find yourself in the Northeast and they haven't plowed the roads, or if you're the only one on the road, just turn around and go home. So they hadn't plowed the roads. It takes me 3 hours to get to the office. And I get there, and the doors are locked. I'm like, huh, well, this is interesting. So I spend another hour and a half driving back. I get there, get online, and I send an email to my boss. He's like, oh no, they haven't plowed the roads. Ain't nobody coming into work. A little heads up would have been nice. So yeah, Maine is terrible in the winter. I'd go to the office, and the sun hadn't risen yet. And I don't get in early, right? And the sun hadn't risen yet, and I would leave the office, and the sun was already set. I went weeks without seeing the sun. Also, Bostonians, as a whole, awesome people. I live with this Boston couple. Woo, Boston! What? Baseball sucks. Boston's awesome. So I was on this contract. Sorry. I was on this contract. I'm a Yankees fan. What are you going to do? I was on this contract. Chloe, how's my time looking? Where am I at? Oh, that's awesome. It's right there. Great. So I am, in fact. Oh, God. So I moved around from job to job. I'm going to have to wrap this up here. There were many lessons learned. just pretend. Fill in the blank. Lessons learned. So I went from Boston. I spent some time in New York. And I was working for a financial services company there, which was great until September 11th. And then it really got to suck. And I decided to leave. And we just wanted to move back. I wanted to move back to Austin. And so I go and tell my boss, I'm going to move back to Austin. And he says, well, you're a crucial member of our team. We'd love having you here. Is there any chance that we can keep you working remotely? It's like, well, I mean, like working from Austin, but still making New York City, Wall Street salary? And he's like, yeah, sure. Where do I sign? That sounds awesome. So the lesson is good, solid employees are like gold. And companies will do whatever they can to keep you around. So I moved back to Austin. And as the first and only remote employee for this company, it leads me to my next lesson. Never be the first or only remote employee for a company. That shit sucked a lot. When they would remember that I was still part of the team, they just gave me the shit work. It was terrible. So I eventually I can't take it anymore. I'm a shitty employee. They're not having it. I'm not having it. So I find a job. I found a job here in town, working on some healthcare software, right? And while I was there, the guy that I shared an office with, this guy named Brian. Now, Brian he's one of those guys that's like, he's just truly gifted at what we do. He's one of the guys who sees things totally differently, but totally in the right way, right? He'd sketch something out, and I sat back, and I would sit and look at his stuff and realize in a million billion years I would never get to that place. And that's what he came up with. That's how he was. So I was fortunate enough to share an office with him, and I realized that my code, my output was better when he looked at it than when I just did it by myself. And I was a better software developer when I would talk to him than when I wouldn't. Which leads me to my next lesson. Just keep an eye out for those people in your life who can be a mentor. Mentoring is crucial in this industry. Everyone who raised their hand has been doing this for less than 6 months. Not kidding. Look for those people who have been doing this for more than 5 years and be a fucking leech. Hang on to them, find them, buy them drink, whatever it takes, and stick with. This was years ago. I still talk to Brian often, and we bounce ideas off of each other. He still makes me a better developer to this day. Look for that and don't let go. So yeah, that was shitty. Yeah, I got to skip that part. Needless to say, I move on from there. And I go work at this company called Serial Solutions, right? And it was an interesting place. We were all, the entire team was totally remote. We're all distributed. And there was one other guy here in town, the guy who hired me, and he invited me over. He was like, we don't have an office. Why don't you just come to my house to work? All right, sure. So I go over there. And first day, walk in and sit down. I'm there for like 10 minutes, right? And this is his house, right? And then his wife walks in to the little office / nursery that we're in. And it's obvious that she's just woken up. She's got the baby, like 5-month-old little baby. she walks in and she says, as a mother with a 5-month-old baby would say, I need to take a shower, and just like hands me the baby. I'm not sure if she knew that I wasn't her husband. But I have kids, so I was like, I'll take a baby, it's fine. So the baby and I are hanging out, talking about stuff, you know. She comes back, we continue working. Lunchtime comes. Turn to my buddy Charles, I'm like, hey, I'm gonna go get some lunch. And he says, oh, that's awesome, let's go get something to eat. All right, so we're walking out. I don't think we're going to like Taco Bell or something, right? And we walk to the kitchen. All right, I'm in the kitchen. And Silva, his wife, is there, and Silva, oh, there's Charles. What up, Charles? We're right at the Serial Solutions part. So his wife's in the kitchen. I think we're gonna get his wife and all go get something to eat, right? But Silva says, "You guys hungry? You want some lunch?" I was like, "Well, I was just gonna go to Taco Bell or something." And Silva proceeds to lay out all this stuff, like for sandwiches and like a salad. Makes us tea. The whole thing completely floors me. Like, I met Silva 4 hours ago, right? I know Charles through a friend of a friend, right? And here they are, opening their home to me, giving me food, breaking bread with me. We sit down, have some sandwiches, and they get to know me. They're asking me questions, and I'm asking them questions, and it proceeds to go like that for, I don't know, like 4 months until we get an office, right? But they treat me like family, right? And I mean, I've been close to other coworkers in the past, but never like this. right? Never brought into a home and treated like family. Which brings me to my next lesson, which is, that's important to me. I didn't know it was important to me at the time, but once I saw it, I knew that I never wanted to be in a place where that wasn't like that, right? Maybe that's not what's important to you, but find the thing. Find the things that are super important to you. Keep your eye out for them. And when you find them, make sure you don't let them go. Make sure that every decision you make after that keeps you in that road. So I'm working at Serious Solutions with Charles, get an office, and at the time, I was going through a divorce, right? Actually, the divorce had already happened. I was miserable. Charles can tell you how awful it was. I've actually talked about this before. I don't need to rehash all of it. But it was bad. It was real bad. It almost killed me. And then at the bottom, at the darkest part, a buddy of mine comes up to me and says, "Well, what's the problem? Like, this is a problem. This is a problem, and you're a software developer, and that's what you do, is you solve problems. So solve the problem." So I had to think about it. It's like, what's the problem? The problem was that I wasn't with my kids, right? Got to see my kids 3 times a month, every now and then in the week. And because of that, right, when I saw the kids, right, I was happy-go-lucky dad, right, all cotton candy and movies and stuff like that, right? So my kids, my beautiful, wonderful children, were turning into these little assholes, right? and I was like, I'm a terrible person, I'm a terrible father, look what I've done, I've ruined my children, they're gonna become serial murderers and venture capitalists, just the worst of the worst. I'm sorry, who said that? That was awful, that was just wrong. So what's the problem? The problem is that I spend time with my kids. How do you solve that problem? It's like, well, you get them back. It's like, that's not gonna happen. What else can you do? It's like, well, maybe you can spend more time with them. How do you do that? So I started looking. And it turns out that through a series of convoluted events, I got to the point where I was able to start picking up my kids after school instead of having them go to daycare. So every day from 3 to 6, I'd pick up my kids, bring them home with me. Now we had time to give them snacks, I had time to help them with their homework, find out about their day, right? And their mom picks them up when she picks them up. I had a lesson here. The lesson. The lesson is, don't be afraid to apply the same type of intellectual rigor that you apply to your engineering problems to your personal problems. This is what we do. We solve problems, right? We solve problems every day, but sometimes we're afraid of digging a little too deep into our personal lives. Don't be. Sometimes all you can do is brute force a problem. Sometimes that's all you can do. It's okay. Don't be afraid of that. Apply the same rigor that you do to engineering as you do your personal life. Page. At the same time, I learned that we all have priorities in life, right? And my priority was my kids. That's what made me happy. That's what made life worth living, was spending time with my kids. So I implore you, look look for that priority. Everyone has a priority list of stuff that they want to accomplish, stuff that they want to be, how they want to be. But you only get to really work at one at any given time. So look for that. Find it, right? So I'm working there. My boss, my now boss, sends me an email. It says, I've had this company for a while, and we're interested. We're about to bring on, we need to bring on a second engineer. Interested in having you fill that position. Now, I met this guy through Cafe Bedouins, which is a weekly deal. We meet on Tuesdays, and people just work on their side projects. That's what Cafe Bedouins is, right? And I met him 4 or 5 years ago, right? And we became friends through Cafe Bedouins. This brings me to my next lesson, which is don't forsake the community. Come out to things like this. Come out to Cafe Bedouins, right? If your thing isn't Rails, that's fine. Any given night, any given week, you can find some group of developers, of designers, of product manager, of cloud engineers, whomever. Michael, I missed you completely. I'm terribly sorry. I'll get you. Yeah. You can always find some group to meet with and talk to. That's crucial. That's key. People tell you in college that you need to build your network. You need to build your network. You need to meet people. Blah 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 blah. Networking is bullshit. Networking is bullshit. Community is key. Sitting down, meeting people, sharing your story with them, that's what's important. That's what's key, right? Don't be afraid of that and look for it. That's how I got this job. I move on from the place I was at, Serial Solutions, over to the place I'm at now, which is Unimetrics. There's no more time. I know. That's all right, Chloe.
7:45.
Fine, perfect. So, present day. I'm working at a company called Unimetrics. We do social media analytics. Great place. We're hiring. Talk to me afterwards. When I was presented with the opportunity to go work at Unimetrics, I had a decision to make, right? I really liked this place. I loved working with Charles. I learned more working with Charles than I had learned probably cumulatively up to that point in my career. That's how awesome he is. But I had a choice to make. It's like now I have this new opportunity. What do I do? So all I can do is measure it against my priorities, right? And what are my priorities? My priorities are spending time with my kids, making sure that we live the life that I want to live with them to the best of my ability. I remember how awesome it is to have a mentor. I want to continue that going on. So I look at this place and I say, well, I really want to work with these guys because I admire them. They're super smart. They know what they're doing. I want to learn from them. Hayes and I are old friends. I've known him for years. I tell him, you know, I need to leave every day to go pick up my kids. I need to do all this stuff. Kids are my priority. He's like, of course. No problem, as long as you get your shit done. So I go in and work at Unimetrics, and it's been the best thing. It's honestly been the best job I've ever had through a career of really, really good jobs, right? They bought me this shirt for my birthday. And it's been amazing, and I'm learning lessons there every day. Last week was my birthday. It's the shirt, and they're free. Always free. I turned 37 last week, and in most industries, 37 is where you kind of hit your stride, right? That's where you kind of really start moving on to the next level. Not in this industry. This is the dark lessons learned. It's tough to get old in this industry. This industry fetishizes youth. What do you see every day? You see Yahoo bought Tumblr and David Karp is fucking 19 years old or whatever. And there's that kid who used Yahoo Pipes or whatever, and he got $18 bajillion, and he's fucking 4 years old, right? like that's this industry. Not just the press, right? This industry fetishizes youth, right? And it craves self-sacrifice, right? Self-sacrifice is the engine that drives this industry. I'll say that again. Self-sacrifice is the engine that drives this industry, right? Don't be fooled by someone who tells you otherwise, because it's not true. Youth, young people drive the startup mechanism, drive the venture capital mechanism in this industry. It's hard to grow old. It's hard to grow old in this industry. Because when you're young, you can focus on work. Your priority, like I talked about earlier, your priority can be work. It can be the startup. It can be that. You can spend 12 hours a day, every day, at work to the sacrifice of everything else. When you get older, other priorities force their way up, right? So people say that technology isn't ageist, but they're not being honest with themselves. It's not true, right? Other priorities surface. Other things demand your attention that aren't work. And what's interesting is that it forces you to get to a point where you realize kind of how absurd life really is, right? We do things today in order that tomorrow will be better, right? We sacrifice for today. We take a lower paying job today for the hope that we can get a better job tomorrow, that the company that we work for will pay off tomorrow. Just fine, except that tomorrow we're one day closer to death, right? We only have a certain amount of time here, right? We don't live for forever. So we have today, and we sacrifice today for tomorrow. But that yesterday is now gone. We'll never get that back. I hope I'm going somewhere good with this. Oh yeah. So how do we decide what to sacrifice, right? How do we decide what's good, what we should sacrifice, right? Comes down to the priorities. In fact, it comes down to the one priority that you have, right? For me, it's my kids. I'll never sacrifice time with my kids for anything else. Maybe that's not your priority, right? Maybe your priority is to get rich and lay on a beach for the rest of your life. That's great. Focus on that. Maybe your priority is to work as little as possible so that you still, work as little as possible, but still have food in your fridge. Well, that's great. Well, focus on that, right? Like make that a thing, right? But focus on it. Don't let it go, right? And make sure that every choice you make in your career leads you to that priority. Every choice in your career and your life should serve that one singular priority. And that's how you get to there. That's how you get to where you want to be. Every decision gets you there. If not, just wasting time. If you're working on a job that doesn't get you to, that isn't aligned with that priority, you're wasting time. And you're wasting time that you don't have. And this is tough for people who are young. This is tough for people who are new to this industry. But like I said, I'm old and lightly drunk. And so you don't, it's hard to get a hold of that, right? But it's true. We don't have infinite time. Every choice you make every decision you make needs to be aligned with that priority. So ask yourself why you do things. Ask yourself why you get up in the morning. Ask yourself why you go to work. Ask yourself why you go to that work, right? Why are you going to the job you're going to today, right? There's tons of reasons to work. There's tons of reasons to go to that job, right? But the one worst reason that you could have is that that's because that's what you did yesterday. You're cheating yourself. You're cheating everyone else who doesn't have that same opportunity you have. Actively choose why you're going to work at the place you are working today, right? It's so easy. It's so easy to get on that little treadmill, on that rat race, where the alarm goes off every morning. I have an alarm set on my phone. Every weekday, it gets me up, and I go to work. And it's so easy to just get up, go take a shower, and go to work, and that's your thing. David Foster Wallace had a great talk about, it was a commencement speech that he gave about kind of the mundanity, the drudgery of work life, right? Where you get up every morning and you go to work and you work for 8 or 10 hours and then you drive home and you're stuck in traffic and you go to the grocery store to get dinner because you forgot to get dinner, and then you go home and you spend 30 minutes with your significant other and you spend 30 minutes just trying to recharge, and you go to bed early just to start it all the next day, right? And then the next thing you know, you're 40, you're 50, you're 60, you're 37. What happened, right? Make that choice. Just make that decision, right? Because otherwise it becomes kind of Sisyphean, right? Sisyphus rolling the stone up the mountain every day, letting it roll down the other side, only to chase after it, roll it back up the mountain, back down the other side for eternity. If you're not careful, your career can feel like that. If you're not careful, that's where you end up. And that's what you're doing every day, every day, every day, every day. And then you wake up and you're fucking 60, right? Camus, always comes back to Camus. And Camus talks about the absurdity of life, right? And he says it's the embracing of that absurdity that provides us with freedom, right? It's when you're walking down the mountain after that rock that you realize that you have a choice. You could take a step, or you cannot. You can go, or you can stand. Choice is yours. That's all he had, right? That's all Sisyphus had. He was stuck on the mountain. He was gonna have to stay there for eternity. But he had a choice. He had a choice to move or to stand, right? And that's what we have, is this choice. We choose to go to work every day, choose to work at the place we work at, or choose to not. You can be a hobo if you want. We choose to live. We don't have to live, right? You don't have to wake up in the morning. You can choose to not. It's your choice, right? And that is where true freedom lies. True freedom lies in understanding you have a choice in everything you do. Every decision you make, everything you do, no one is holding a gun to your head. You choose, actively choose to take every breath you take. You actively choose to wake up in the morning. You actively choose to go to work. It's your choice. And that's the last lesson. Realize that you are an active participant, not only in your career, but in your life, right? You choose what you do, and you choose why you do it. Find that priority, and your priorities will shift over time, right? Mine did. find that priority, whatever it is today, and every decision you make sure that it measures properly against that priority, right? Make sure it serves that priority, or at the very least does not contradict it, right? Live every day the most that you can, right? Thoreau said, suck the marrow from life. And that's all we can do. That's all we do. That's all we have. Live every day to its fullest, right? You have the power to choose, right? And that's the awesome thing about being a person, about being human. So we have this ability to choose. We have the not only the ability to choose, but the responsibility to choose. And it's heavy sometimes. It's hard, right? And it's easy to not choose. It's easy just to do what you did before. It's easy to do what you did yesterday, right? But you're selling yourself short if you do that. You're selling yourself short if you do not choose. If you don't just stop every once in a while and think about the choices that you make. And honestly, I wish that I had realized this 17 years ago, because I think things would have been a little bit different. But I realized it this weekend when I was putting together this presentation. And so that's what I tell you guys. That's it. Thank you.